Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. And again, thank you also for the very kind and detailed introduction. And at the outset, I would like also to thank my very good friend who invited me to this particular event, your very own Dean of the College of Education, Dr. Erlinda Kalumpang. And I also uh, I treat this as my opportunity to be with you, particularly the people of Negros Oriental there in Dumaguete City. And I'm happy to be here and we'll be sharing with you something about gender and development and the things that have progressed as we continue to experience the way we interact with the society. That is why it is being called gender and development. So uh, I would like also to give my due respect to the management of the Foundation University, particularly the president of the university, and the rest of the men and women who have been working so hard for the benefit of the students of Foundation University. Again, my thank and my gratitude for allowing me to be here with you and sharing something with you today. Please give me enough time to open my presentation. Asa ko ani doon for a while. Okay. Is my presentation now visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So again, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the topic titled Gender and Development. The reason why it's being given the title Gender and Development because as the things progress, there are instances wherein the standard, the usual standard in which we refer to the roles no, of both genders, the male and female. No, as we progress, now it's becoming, I should say, not exactly what it was expected no, before in terms of the roles. No, so these are the things that we'll be talking this afternoon, and also how are we going to treat this particular topic if we are going to relate our experience in the classroom, because as I understand, our audience, our participants here are mostly coming from the education sector, particularly from the Department of Education, and of course, the education students of the Foundation University, as I understand during our discussion with Dr. Kalumpang. So here it is, gender and development. First, we will start with the terminology, the definition of the different terminologies, and then we'll be dealing with the roles of each of the genders and how each of the roles should be treated inside the classroom, and how will the teacher handle situations that would require the recognition of both genders, and how we are going to implement such program in the education sector so that this particular program will mean something no, in the lives of our teachers as well as the lives of our students. Okay, so I will now start. I am Carmelino Bernadas, your speaker for this afternoon. I am from, as mentioned, I am from the Schools Division of Baybay City, but I am born in Naval Biliran. So first, let me proceed. Ay, hindi siya nag-move doon. Okay, ano ko din? Sige. Okay. Uh, what is gender? No, you might be asking what gender is. It is one of the universal dimensions on which status differences are based. No, whether the status is a male or a female. No, it's a social construct specifying the socially and culturally prescribed roles that men and women are to follow. So, meaning there has to be standard that each of the genders will will follow. Later on, we will discuss the details of this. Now, how does uh, sex differ from gender? So when we say sex, it's a biological concept. No, it's a biological concept. It's based on during the time that we are born and our own sex is being identified, whether we are a boy or a girl. Now, gender and development, commonly known as GAD, no, the program which is commonly known as GAD, it focuses on social, economic, political, and cultural forces that determine how differently men and women participate in, benefit from, and control the resources and activities. So it comes from different aspects, no, social, economical, political, and cultural forces. There are a lot of things that we have to also focuses on socially determined relations between men and women, because socially there are also expectations. How should men behave? How should women behave? And what are the limitations of each of these as expected in the society? It also focuses on gender relations. No, how each of the gender relate with each other, how each of these genders would relate to others within the society, designs developing programs to respond to gender issues. That is, if we are now looking at this program at our level in the school, no, how are we going to advocate such a program among the people in the community, no, and even in the school. It commits to the goal of gender equality and women empowerment and improvement. That is why it is given the term development, gender and development, because um, it's more particularly concerned about women. How are we going to empower them so that their gender, their sex will no longer be considered as a weaker sex? No, because uh, as rather customarily, no, we construed women as a weaker sex, no, and they only have their own limitations. That was before. So as I have said, as time progresses, no, there is already something that we call development, no, treating them as co-equal with men, right? So there are also certain policies that are supporting the implementation of the gender and development, because we cannot just say that these are the things that we want to empower women without any basis at all. No, so we should have very legitimate basis for that, and that these are the laws, no, that we have. First is we have the so-called CEDAW, or the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discriminations Against Women. So with this, we can say that gender and development was conceived because of the experiences of women before, no, wherein, as I have said, they were considered as the weaker sex, so that a lot of women, because of that notion, has suffered a lot, no, has suffered a lot in terms of having them discriminated. So there is that particular gathering before, a convention, no, called CEDAW, that made the conception of this particular program. It was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1979. So you would notice it 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 came years back, no, and came into force in 1981. And when 180 out of 191 countries worldwide signed the treaty in March 2005. So you will see the development of this policy. No, when it was first conceived, probably it was not given so much attention yet. No, and then later on, it was given the necessary attention to the point that there is already that so-called signing of the treaty, which only happened in 2005. Right? We also have, from that time on, we we also have the Republic Act 7192, no, an act promoting the integration of women as feel equal partners of men in development and nation building. So because of that law, it started the recognition of women that they also have something to they also have their own capacity to do something, no? Then we also have the official development assistance, which supports the program and activities for women, right? Then, other than that, there are also other legislations that show the growing concern for the improvement of the status of women. One of which is the Republic Act 6949, which declares, no, until now, we are doing that, we're celebrating that. Every March 8th of every year, no, of the year, as a working holiday to be known as National Women's Day. So that's a manifestation that women this time are already given attention, and their efforts are also recognized. No? And in fact, we have started to observe that there are already administrators who are women. We even had a president before was a woman. No, there were two already. No, and uh, other similar observations. We also have the Public Act 7322, which concerns on increasing the maternity benefits of women in the private sector. Uh, RA 7655, which increases the minimum wage of domestic helpers. Most of our domestic helpers are women, no? And so that they will also feel that they also are given so much attention about their welfare. So this is the corresponding Republic Act that was signed into law. Our main concern here when we speak of gender and development is gender equality. Okay? Wherein, as I have said, women are treated equal with the men. Right? So that's it. They always claim that men and women are equal, no? Walang nakakalamang, wala ding kulelat sa kanilang dalawa. They should be treated equal. Actually, there was a question a while ago when they say, why is it that the law is only focused on there are also instances wherein between couples, it's the husband that is being treated as a weaker as the weaker sex or gender. All right. So one of our resource persons before answered to that query, saying that the law is always what is this? The law is always uh, provided for the weaker group, no, for the weaker group, and generally it's the women that is considered as the weaker sex, so that in order to protect them, there is the law that is being um, enacted for that purpose, no? And if there are men who allow themselves to be discriminated by women, then it's something that they allow for themselves, no? Okay. So we also have the so-called gender socialization in school and other learning settings. Okay. Later on, we'll be dealing so much details about this one. So we will also be talking about this gender socialization in school and other learning settings. So with that, I would like to direct you to my presentation outline. Here in this presentation, I will be sharing with you something about sex and gender. How do they differ? Because they should, one should differ from from the other. Then what is gender socialization, as I have mentioned a while ago? Then the school as a socialization agent, because among us educators, it is in the school where we can um, do more in terms of advocating certain programs such as the gender and development, wherein it's through the school where we can present the details of this and allow our teachers as well as our students to experience how this particular program should be treated. Gender socialization in other learning setting will also be uh, dealt with later on. Then gender fair education. How can we create a gender fair education in our respective school settings? It requires the effective teacher to do that in relation to gender and development program implementation. Okay, so let me start. It says here by Dr. Kenneth Kushner, an American professor, who says an extremely important part of an individual's identity and one that begins at least at birth is gender. That's his contention. No? So with that, we can say that it is more, according to Kushner, it is more than just knowing that you are male or female. No? Identification of sex is usually clearly internalized by the age of 3, but begins around at the age of 18 months. That's his findings, no? When he did this research. So sex and gender, what's the difference between the two? I already initially presented to you the difference between the two, but for the details, here it is. When we say sex, it is categorized as male or female. All right? Male or female. Then it's something biological, as I have mentioned. No? Kay, kung mataw ka ang imong kuan, sex is male, so makita magyud na. No? Kung male ka, then kung female ka. It's already something that is fixed at birth. It can never be changed until you will decide to do so when you grow old. Then, sex does not change across. It's okay. It's already something that is fixed. Does not change across time and space, and it's equally valued. Okay, mo man gihatag sa ato sa Ginoo, so it has to be equally valued. When we speak of gender, it refers to masculinity and femininity, meaning the behavior that is associated to it, no, to the kind of sex that you have, no. So gender is something that is associated. If you're a male, you have to it is expected that you have to manifest certain masculinity in your behavior. And if you are a female, you have to manifest the femininity in your behavior. So again, gender is socially, culturally, and historically determined. So in other words, it is something that is determined as you continue to interact with your environment. That is why sometimes we say we have the gender preference. No? Our gender preference would now depend on how we behave, how we interact with our environment. Learned through socialization. Mabito nang giingon nga, even if your sex is male, but if most of the time the people whom you interact are mostly female, sometimes you tend to have a gender that is more of a female, right? Because it's learned through socialization. It varies over time and space. Mas siguro nag-iingon na ito nga usahay, na time nga you prefer to be more of a female or than a male, no? Because it varies over time and space, no? Unequally valued, okay, unequally valued, no? Masculinity as the norm. All right, that's it. So sex then is a biological characteristics, because from birth it's already determined. If you're a male, from birth you are already determined as a male. You are identified as a male, no? While gender is a social characteristics. So it must be something that is now associated with the behavior. Right? That's gender according to Kushner in his study in 2012. Kushner also added that gender identity includes knowledge of a large set of rules and expectations for what boys and girls should wear, diba? Then how they should speak and act, and their place in the overall structure of the society. So that's how it is. This now supports to what I was mentioning a while ago. So let's come to gender role, no, which the gender role that we have been mentioning, according to Kushner, can be affected by race, okay, ethnicity, social class, religion, and geographical region. Magdepende na siya, no? Magdepende na siya sa inyong race kung unsa mo. Because as I have said, gender is mostly determined through the behavior associated to it. Okay? Again, men and women are equal. Okay? Emphasize na to diha. It's equal. Now, what is gender socialization? How is this being determined? I would like to expose you to a particular activity. Don't worry, we just have to respond to this. No, we don't have to write something. I just want you to engage on this activity. Let's engage together. No? This is about answering the following, whether it's a myth or truth. Because what used to be true before may be something considered as a myth at present. So let's start the ball rolling. Here, you can participate, no, if you want. If a father does the household work, he's considered as under the saya. Is it a myth or a truth? Anybody? Does it still holds true until this time? So, dili na karon siguro nimo ma-determine og under the saya pa ba na karon, because we already considered both sexes as equal, no? Male and female are already equal. All right? So, one here, most of the responses here are myth, no? Simply because this time whatever the male can do can be done by the female, and whatever things can be done by the female can also be done by the male. So both parties will just agree, no? So wala na aro under desaya karon, because we are now living in a practical world. Okay? So next, men are better leaders and administrators than women. So naturally mo react yun ani ang mga women this time, no? So because that is no longer the truth until this time. So still it's a myth, because as we have mentioned, there are already a lot of leaders and administrators who come from from women. Okay? So in fact, nanay president of the university who is a female. Ang anyong dean karon si Dr. Kalumpang is a female. So mo-object si Dr. Kalumpang ani. It is the woman's fault if she is being harassed sexually when she is wearing skimpy clothing. Myth or truth? Sige daw. So, it's already a myth, because ang mag-wear karon og skimpy clothing is already something that is normal, something that is usual. No? So, di na karon malisang ang mga tao nga magkita, nga naay makita nga pakigol ang shorts. No? So, dili na karon urusahon karong mga panahon na. So, it's already a myth. It is not proper for a girl to say, I love you first to a boy. Not proper pa ba na karon? Kay, mo claim naman karon ang mga girls nga ang boys ra ba ay ang may karapatan nga mo express ilang feelings, no? Kay gone are the days when the females are just left at home, do the household chores, and they are the group that are seldom being listened to, no? So Sometimes they were construed as somebody who are not allowed to express uh, whatever feelings they have. So this time, wala, pareho na. No? Pwede na ang girl may nag I love you. No, nya pwede na pud ang boy maingon nga ako pang huna-hunaon. No? So these are things that were possible before, but this time it's already a myth. The mother should be the only one responsible for child rearing and parenting. Is it still possible today? No, especially if the husband is the one who has no job, who has not landed a job. No, it's the wife. So they have to change roles. So it's not always the mother who should be the only one responsible for child rearing and parenting. No, both na nakaroon, di ba? Both of them. So it's myth. All right. So that brings us to the term socialization. So when we say socialization, it is the process by which social norms, roles, and expectations are learned and internalized. So karon, dapat internalized na nato nga both men and women can equally perform the same tasks. No? What men can do can also be done by women and vice versa. So when we speak of gender socialization, it's the process by which norms and expectations in relation to gender are learned by both sexes. The ano by both yeah, persons, women and the men. Okay? Process by which norms and expectations in relation to gender are learned by both the men and the women. That's gender socialization. We also have the so-called gender stereotype. Kana bang murag gi pareho na lang tanan, no? It's a form of prejudgment, bias, or limitation given to roles and expectations of males and females. Okay? So, mayunta nga, kung male ka, you should act like a masculine. If you are a female, dapat feminine ka. Nya di naman na karon possible because there are also males who are effeminates, no? Murag bayin-on sa Binisaya pa. But they are not gays. They are just as gentle as they are, no? To the point that they appear to be effeminate. Pero kanang nasubraan ras kabuutan because later on we will look into the difference between the two, how each of this is being construed before and how it changes through time until today. Gender involves the differentiations attributed by a given culture to women and men. Of course, in the following aspects. One, social roles. Second, capacities. And the third, traits and characteristics. Let's find out. Let's go to the first. Gender stereotypes in social roles. No? For men, ang stereotype ani sa social roles for men, first, provides financially for the family. Mamagin ang ato. O kisap tong kinamagwangan labi naglalaki, usually kung wa na ang father, mo gyud mo provide sa family. No? Work as managers, construction builders, engineers, more of the masculine type. Then portrayed as leaders. Mo na siya ang stereotype sa social roles sa mga lalaki. Let's look at the women, no? See? Takes care of the house and children. Kaluoy. Mura gid taw na permino sa una. Takes care of the house and children. Works as nurse, kung professional man. Then teacher. Then secretary. Okay? Then portrayed as simply followers. Kay usually, may gitag babae, submissive. Okay? So, gender stereotypes in social roles. What about the second? Gender stereotypes and capacities, no? Ang ilang capability. For men, iba may yung good in math and science, mga lalaki yun na, no? Physically strong, no? Nya karon ngani na may babae nga mualsa na ganig manghalublaks, no? Nya usually men are construed as firm decision makers, no? Dili sila mga fickle minded. When they decide, usually it's already the final decision. Okay? But for women, the stereotypes in their capabilities or capacities is good in arts and less intellectual pursuits. See? Physically weaker and fragile. No? Babae nga ni, it's construed nga mohilak dayon. Okay niya. Ang lalaki way karapatan mohilak. Then women wishy-washy or fickle-minded in decision making. Mag-usab-usab. That is why before, di ba, even in typhoons, the name of typhoons before, ang gipangalan din sa ila babayi ang mga pangalan, mga basyang, mga undang, mga sa panadinha, because ang typhoon is it has the wind that is continuously changing. So it's associated with the female. But this time, take note ang mga typhoons karon, mga storms, they're already given the name of the males. No? Imagine kasi agaton, mga ambo. No? So that's how time changes. All right. Let's continue for the third, gender stereotypes in traits and characteristics. Unsa maning sa men? Mao na diha. Lalaki nga ni kuno ka, you are active but aloof. No? Active kay. Usually ang lalaki, ang notion sa lalaki, not more on words but more on actions. No mo na nga active siya, then aloof. Kung lalaki nga ni ngayaw-yawan, magunahuna nakaunsa man na siya nga klase, no? Pero that is no longer the trend this time. So aggressive, di ba? Aggressive ang lalaki. Muna nga sa relasyon kuno, lalaki pirmi ang magda kay aggressive man. That was before. That's the usual stereotypes and in their characteristics. Independent, no? Can do things alone without help of others. Then brave, isog jud kuno ng lalaki. For women, passive, loving, ba? Peaceful, dependent because submissive man lagi, and then fearful. Mo na mohilak dayon. Okay? That's the stereotypes among women as regards their characteristics and their traits. Now, let's go to the areas of socialization. Ang kato ganina mga gender roles to siya associated to the respective sexes. Areas of socialization this time. We have areas of or channel of socialization. No, there are 4. It can be through the family. It can be through the church. Why? Because ang church naman po din ang mga tao, no? There is also socialization in the church. It's not just praying all the time, di ba? Then may mga different organizations also in the church. Then mass media, which is very much popular this time, and of course, the school where most of us are spending so much of our time. So let's start from the first, family. Ruth Hartley notes 4 processes involved in gender socialization. One is manipulation. Manipulation in the family. That means that people handle girls and boys different as infants. Example, it's mentioned here. Mothers tend to use more physical stimulation on male infants and more verbal stimulation on female infants. Nga naman, kay expectedly, the male infants can sustain physical than the female. Okay? Infants. Usually, in handling also babies, ang mga boys were tossed in the air. No? Lalaki. Na gani babae gani nga kuan, ayaw kay kuan, malisang. So, girl babies get more delicate handling, hinayon. That's the usual sa family. That's manipulation. Second, we call it canalization. What do we mean by that? That means that people direct children's attention to gender appropriate objects. Example, here. In the choice of toys, di ba mayroon gani, kung lalaki nga ni dapat mga toy cars, no? Machines. While sa girls, they're given dolls, mga tea sets, no? Di ba? Because toys teach children what their prescribed roles in life will be. All right? That's it. So, di naman na karon, is this still happening this time? No nya, kaniadto gani our parents will get mad if the boy in the family opts to play the doll, no? Rather than the toy car. Dako na kay ng kauwaw, dako kay ng kasuko. But this time we become more open-minded, no? Because we also grow in terms of experience, and we are also being uh, seasoned by experience, and as we continuously interact with the environment and with the society. Number three is we call verbal appellation. That's telling children what is expected of them. O ikaw ha, kay lalaki ka, dapat maunay imong behavior, maunay imong buhaton. Ikaw, babae ka, ing-ani radyog ka. So that's it. Example, kung lalaki ka, dapat brave, no? Dapat brave ka. No, kuang ka, kanana ang sa tawag, ana, kanang mga Superman bitaw, mga Batman, mga unsa na dinha. They should be associated with the boy, while ang girl should continue to be pretty, to be charming. And expectedly, boys should not cry. Imagine, ha? Bisag kahilako na ka, imo na lang iluom. Then girls, don't hit playmates. Kay passive man lagi, submissive lang. Bisag iunsa na ka, di lang, agwanta lang yun, kay you are just a girl. Diba? So difficult. And the fourth is activity exposure. Okay? That's familiarizing children to their gender appropriate tasks. Okay, di ba? May appropriate para sa babae. Kung hala, manilhig ka, no? Manghugas, ba? Ang lalaki magunsa raman. Mo na diha ang injustice usahay kay lalaki o maghuwat na lang, maglingkod ra siya. So, here is a specific example. Girls help their mother with housework. Boys are encouraged to play outside the house. Imagine. So, that's the usual stereotype that we have experienced. Let's go to the church. It says here, gender roles in Christianity vary considerably today as they have during the last 2 millennia. This is especially true with regards to marriage and ministry. So see, that's how it is being construed. When it comes to the church, that's how it is being promoted. Arita diri sa mass media, kay maog yun ni pinakakuang karon. Diba? The mass media is something that has influenced a lot in terms of how we, consider our environment this time. Now, mass media as one of the areas of channel of socialization, has influenced a lot, both boys and girls, like the internet, the radio, the magazines, the television, the newspapers. That is why as time passes by, na ang atong orientation has becoming change, just becoming, yeah, has been changing, I should say, no? Because of the many influences brought by the mass media this time. Okay, so how are we going to respond to this as educators? How are we going to properly and appropriately respond to this? So these are the challenges, no? Talking about mass media, media sexualization of young female celebrities, no, makita sa uban nga ay ingani na dai ni karon, dapat ingani na ang atong the way we dress ourselves, the way we carry ourselves, no, in terms of marketing of unrealistic beauty standards through fashion magazines. Imagine, unrealistic beauty standards. Kaya daghan naman ta, uso naman karon ang filter, uso naman karon ang, di ba? Na yung uban gani nga may mausa na gani kung magkita na sila personally mingon, oh ikaw di ay mo din na siya. Kay lahi man ang iyang profile sa Facebook, lahi man kining agi mag-filter, no? So sometimes hindi na magpapakatotoo. Video games that promote violence and negative stereotypes, no? Then music lyrics and music videos that promote negative stereotypes and violence. Very sad. Okay? Oh, nya kani po di nana usually nga mingon nya kung ang tan-awon dapat sa mga girls, dapat ang TV program mga ingon ani, no, mga sani siya, unsa ni nga mga salida kanang mga about princess, no, about mga kuan. So kung sa lalaki nga ni dapat kanang naay mga power, no, power mo nang ila kasagaran. So that's it. Sa school, no, there are areas, channel of socialization in the school that we can have it as consider it as an instrument to influence also, like instructional language, something that we have to correct on. Classroom management and instructional materials. How? In instructional language, take note, the use of generic words to refer both girls and boys. Example, he, his, or man. No? Like, kanamayon bitata, if in a statement, we mean all people, but usually we use the term which is more of a male gender. Okay? Like this, the use of stereotype language. Example, freshman instead of first year students. So we refer all the first year students as freshmen. O di man tamiyog fresh woman, no, di ba? Mankind instead of humanity. Fisherman instead of fisher folk. Then chairman instead of chairperson. Okay, so these are things that we should also be be observant, so very keen about, no, as teachers. We should be conscious on this, because with the gender and development program, we need to ascertain that we also have to consider the other sex, no, the other gender, no? So if we refer to both, no, example, kumingon ka, instead of chairman, or instead of saying chairwoman, no, so chairperson, no? Kanamingon nga, unsa man kuno na sir ang congressman, nya may mag congresswoman, unsa man siya pag, how are we going to use that as something common? So representative, di ba? May ta representative of the first district, representative of the lone district. Okay. Next, classroom management. How are we going to apply? Assigning of groups, di ba? May boys and girls together, not boys against girls. No? Tasks given by teachers. No? Dapat, it should be something that considers both sexes. Ang discipline, dapat di ka mag-prescribe nga maurag yun ang discipline para sa lalaki, mao ni ang sa babae. No? So Karon lahi naman ang ato kay wa na may corporal punishment, no? Wa naman na siya. So whatever best rather, whatever best discipline that we can utilize so that we can continue and maintain the state of being disciplined in both sexes, the boys and the girls, or the male and female. That is insofar as class management. No? Then, instructional materials. Notice nga there are instructional materials like this na sa textbooks, ang uban, puro ra mga lalaki ang nakadrawing. No? Illustrations, more on male. So, dapat sagulan po siya og female. Okay? So that we will not be discriminating the other sex. Then, direct teaching materials, look at that, peripheral teaching materials, dapat it should be for both sexes. Okay? Or, what is most suited for each, no? And what are the things that can be utilized by both. So, kana siya, we emphasize this sa school because it would provide a notion among students. So teachers should be very careful about this, no? Because it is through our language, no? Through our actions that something will be instilled in the minds of our students, our learners. Now, how are we going to create gender fair education? No? What is that? What is that so-called gender fair education? It's we call gender equality in the classroom. No? Gender equality in the classroom, right? When you give time for your learners to play, it should be something that is promoting gender equality in learning and in doing group activities, for example, no? Do not allow that all the time it will be dominated, leading the group will always be dominated by female or by male. No? It should be well distributed. So, gender-free education can be also manifested through language and again instructional materials and depth and core messages on gender. Later on, we'll be showing to you how these are being implemented. And take note, the only thing that I would like to emphasize here, the teacher plays a vital role in this program. No? So, for this particular program to be properly and successfully implemented in the education sector, it requires the best action coming from the teacher. For you to be very careful about your language, about your action, and about the way you treat your students. Right? So, fair education as part of God program, that's shared parenting. No? It promotes shared parenting, shared home management, and shared decision making. Okay? When we say shared parenting, that's taking care of the baby, no, by both. No? Helping the children with their homework, how it should not always be done by the mother. No? It can also be done by the father, including disciplining the children. Okay? So, dili na, gone are the days that's only played by, the role is just being played by one, the mother or the father. It should be equally done by both parents. Shared home management, that's fixing the house, cleaning the house, dapat tulong-tulong, no? Doing the laundry, going to market, cooking, preparing the table, washing the dishes. No, it should not only be done by sisters, but it can also be done by brothers, right? So, dapat we should be able to promote that among our students and among the parents of our students as teachers. Then, share decision making. even even in your respective schools, no, uh, there are instances nga you are called by your school head, and then you have to share ideas together. So it should be also considered, the both sexes should also be considered. It should not come from mostly from female or from male alone. No, family council giving permission to children, deciding for the affairs of the children. No, in the family, dapat may so we have the so-called gender sensitive teacher and the biased teacher insofar as gender and development is concerned. Now, how do we describe a gender sensitive teacher as against the biased teacher? Here are the indicators. Let's start with the gender sensitive teacher. It is defined through the word or the combat, because a gender sensitive teacher combats discrimination between uh, genders. Letter C stands for cares to give fair recognition of both genders. Okay? Give fair recognition to both. Opposes language use that restricts genders. So be very careful. Be conscious of our words. Then makes proper addresses a must. No? Proper addresses a must. So, di ba? If you address a male teacher, you say Mr. Bernadas, no? Mr. De La Cruz or Sir De La Cruz. No? Then if it's a female, you know what to do. Sometimes you call him Miss, you call him Ma'am. No? That's how to address them. Brings forth messages with sensitivity. No? Be sensitive enough. Then avoids exclusionary expressions. No? Nga, kanang usually it's favorable to one group of genders or sex. Then treats all individuals with fact and sense. That's how the gender sensitive teacher should be. What about the biased teacher? No? Take note, the description here mostly refers to consciousness. No? How your consciousness is working to the point that you will not be, how do we call that? You will not be creating frustrations on the other party. Okay? It is defined through the word, of course, biased. No? Letter B stands for blurred consciousness. I think it should be double R, no? Ang blur. No, it's typographical error. Then indirectly builds consciousness, alarmingly unconscious. No, kaya magpataka, sometimes we become tactless. We don't consider the situation. Then supportive of a false consciousness, enacts a different consciousness, and delays real learning. No? Real learning. Sometimes, kaya nga delay man ang real learning, kay the student becomes bothered man because of what you say. No? So, instead of concentrating directly to what is supposed to be learned, the fact that their minds are bothered, so it delays the learning. No? So, just simply look at the pictures there, the illustrations. Look at the face of a biased teacher and the environment that the gender sensitive teacher is cultivating. So we can already sense how one is different from the other, how a gender sensitive teacher is different from a biased teacher. So be conscious of this. Let us remember, uh, each one of us should always remember that as teachers, we play a major role in creating school environments that are free, of gender bias and in encouraging both male and female to reach their highest potentials in work and abilities. So, by avoiding gender bias, we will be able to produce a conducive learning environment free from discrimination among our learners in the classroom, and that could be the best action that our teacher can do, no? So that they will be able to encourage our learners to learn, work hard for their learning because they can sense that their teacher is very much supportive in them insofar as gender and development program is concerned. It's not just a program, but it has to be properly implemented to the point that it will be felt by to the level of our students. Any program will become futile without proper implementation of the frontliners who are supposed to implement the program. In this case, the teachers in the different schools. So, in DepEd, just a sharing, no, I know that not most of us here are coming from DepEd, but we just would like to inform you, to emphasize to you that in order for this program to be properly instituted, it is implemented through a DepEd memorandum since 2004. No? And until this time, it is still existing. The more that it is being given so much attention. So it is through DepEd Memorandum number 19, series of 2004, entitled Gender and Development or GOD programs. Still, it was still signed by the former Undersecretary, who was an officer in charge during the release of this memo, Yusek Ramon Sibacani. Okay, and it was emphasized there in that memo how the program should be realized, how this program should be enacted at the level of the school. Later on, I will be showing you one of the sample of a sample GOD, gender and development action plan developed by one teacher. Oh, here, it's already here. So, if you will notice, because this time part of giving or consider institutionalizing, I should say, part of institutionalizing the program is uh, emphasizing that in the entire budget of the school, 5% of that 5% or 10%. I think it's 5%. 5% of the total allotment or budget of the office should be allotted to gender and development activities. Okay? So, it's for that to be fully realized, there has to be a corresponding action plan. This is a sample gender and development plan. No? So you will notice from the time the program is going to be conceptualized, it starts with orienting the school personnel regarding the program. So there are gender issues and concern that has to be addressed by that. No? Kuan lang. First column here for the sake of our discussion is on program, activity, and project. What are the things that you need to do? And with that particular program or activity, what gender issue or concern is being addressed? So that's the second. And then what's the objective? No, God-related objective. And then identified activity. Who are the target participants to this, no, or the persons involved, no, and the God performance indicator that is going to be attained, no, and of course the corresponding budget. Let's always remember there is no plan that is ever efficient and effective without giving a particular budget for that. So that's why it is being here. being presented here. Um, that's the second page of that. No, just run through. And you will notice that uh, last activity there is organizing a symposium regarding gender sensitivity, women's rights, and other related laws. No, you will notice that this is just for 1 year, Kinesia. So one final activity there is the symposium that is going to be conducted. Okay, all right. And then before I end, now let me show you this wisdom quote for all of us. Teachers often leave a mark on their students, but they seldom leave mark on their profession. So naman na, because we're so much focused on our students, sometimes to the point that we forgot ourselves. So that's the usual thing that happens to teachers. We often leave mark on our students, but seldom leave mark on our profession. So we are so engrossed with what we are supposed to do, what are expected of us as teachers, to the point that we somehow sacrifice ourselves. But that should not be, so that we can continue grow as professional teachers. We should also give time for ourselves, so that the more that we progress as professionals, the more that we can share better ideas and learning among our students. So thank you so much.